going to be about a 5-minute video in which we're going to go over just some of the key concepts from week 1 from our advanced statistics class. We're going to talk about 3 things today. First, you're just going to mention again, understanding statistics is all about vocabulary, but it's also an iterative process. And we're going to talk about a key concept that's going to be with us through a lot of the analyses we're going to do this semester, and that is that a variate is a type of a latent variable. We're going to define both of those things. So first and foremost, as we've talked about before, learning the vocabulary behind statistics will help you to eventually understand the most important concepts. There is so much vocabulary, it's going to be a step-by-step process, but you can do it. The way that you can learn that vocabulary is through an iterative process of reading, rereading, and rereading again key chapters, key parts of chapters, analyses, research articles. Statistics is very iterative. It means it takes multiple repetitions or multiple reviews of the material to really get it. But you're going to get it enough after 1 or 2 reviews. What I often tell students is it's just like driving a car. You know the basics of how to drive, right? But an auto mechanic knows more, but you can still drive safely and get where you're going without being an actual auto mechanic. And that's how it is with statistics. We're going to learn statistics well enough to carry out your dissertation, to read research, but you don't have to get to the level of an auto mechanic when it comes to statistics. So let's get to our definition that we're going to talk about this week, that we talked about in week 1. What is a variate and what is a latent variable? A variate is a type of a latent variable. As you see down here, a latent variable is a larger category of the type of variables that are out there. These other 3 things, variates and latent variables, are exactly the same. So a variate is a variable that's not measured. So is a latent variable. A variate is the numerical result of a group of measured variables. SPSS takes care of that for you. Same is true for a latent variable. A variate can be a group of independent or dependent variables, and so can a latent variable. So let's look at some examples. So here we see an example of a variate in a multiple regression equation. So on this side of the equation, of a multiple regression equation, this is often called the variate. It's a combination of measured variables. Here are your 3 independent x variables that we've measured. The y variable on the other side, this is the unmeasured outcome variable y. It's the numerical result of the measured variables on the variate side. Another way to think of this broader category of latent variables, or a variate, is a cake recipe. We measure the combined ingredients, just like the independent variables in multiple regression, to produce this delicious cake. But the cake doesn't have one measure. It becomes an unmeasured new thing based on all of the ingredients, just like a latent variable. So the cake is similar to the latent dependent variable, while the measured ingredients are similar to the measured independent variables. So in a multivariate analysis of variance, where we're measuring our latent variable well-being, we're doing that by measuring anxiety and depression. Those are combined by SPSS numerically to produce this unmeasured latent variable, well-being, just like cake is an unmeasured thing based on all the ingredients. Anxiety and depression are measured variables that combined create well-being as a latent variable. So most multivariate statistics include a variate, which is the combination of several independent variables, usually noted as x, to predict an outcome variable, usually noted as y. Multiple regression is an example, factor analyses are another example, and structural equation modeling are another example of all these different latent variables. And again, SPSS does all these computations for you. We just have to understand what a latent variable is, that it's unmeasured, and that it's made up of these measured variables. And we're going to talk a lot more about that as we get into factor analyses and structural equation modeling, and also multivariate analysis of variance. So for your learning, I recommend about once a month or so, reread Chapter 2 of Myers et al., reread Chapter 1 of Elliott and Woodward, and you're going to find that you're understanding more and more, but you're going to understand enough to be able to do these analyses and understand what the results are telling you. Thank you so much for your attention.